Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Hey, what's going on, all newcomers? Welcome back, fellow Aeternians. This is AP, and today we are going to be continuing our conversation from last night about the Syrian sarin chemical attacks, as well as covering the aftermath of the bombings by some Western nations, which included the United States, Britain, and France coming together to attack chemical weapon stations in Syria that were supported by Russia. And there's been quite a few developments since Jet and I finished talking about that last night. So let's get into it. According to the continuation of the Guardian article we were reading last night, it says that they've had some continued updates. So we're going to check those out real quick. One thing, at the United Nations, the Security Council rejected a Russian resolution condemning the aggression against Syria by the United States and its allies. Only three countries, Russia itself, plus China and Bolivia, backed Moscow's resolution calling for condemnation of the airstrikes carried out on Friday night. After the vote, the Russian envoy, Vasily Nebenzia, said, "Today is a very sad day for the world, the UN, its charter, which was blatantly violated." So essentially, Russia's position that's now been supported by China and Bolivia is saying that the United States, Britain, and France were completely wrong in their action to commit these airstrikes. However, the UN has rejected that proposal and said, essentially, without declaring it, has validated their right and their authority to go after those chemical weapon stations because of the idea that Assad was targeting his own people and because international interest was supporting the idea of protecting those people's rights as well as in stopping the manufacture of those chemical weapons. So, another continued update. A senior U.S. administration official went further than the Pentagon, saying sarin nerve agent was used by the Assad regime in Douma on April 7th. So this does confirm that it was sarin gas. We assessed that chlorine and sarin were used in the attack, the official said, pointing as evidence to the nature of the victim's symptoms, such as narrowing of pupils in their eyes and the effects of their nervous systems, along with the sheer lethality of the gas. Those symptoms don't come from chlorine, they come from sarin, she added. So this is very seriously known as a sarin gas attack, and it's something that's terribly devastating to the people that he did it to. It's something that should absolutely be investigated and should be something that is inherently in your rights to be protected from. It's just an awful way to suffer and to die. A senior U.S. Syrians remain divided over the airstrike. So there's started to become a little bit of conflict between Syrians themselves. Some who support the United States, Britain, and France's actions in stopping the manufacture of the sarin gas, by the Syrian government under Assad's regime. However, there are other Syrians who feel like this has become sort of an invasion and an intrusion by Western powers on Syrian internal conflicts. So this update says, Wael Abdullah, the 25-year-old resident of Ghouta, told The Guardian, and this is a great step by President Trump, by which he sends a hot message to Bashar al-Assad that he can't continue killing his people by all kinds of weapons with the help of the Russians and Iranians. But Ayad Yunus, a 35-year-old teacher in secondary school in Damascus, said, "This is a blatant aggression against Syria, a staged drama created by the U.S. to attack our land." So that's saying that this is sort of giving those two different sides. One saying this is absolutely completely aggression. One saying that this was necessary, needed, and a reasonable measure to be taken in order to prevent further attacks. Western leaders continued to add their voices to support US, France, and UK airstrikes. Canada stands with our friends in this necessary response, and we condemn in strongest possible terms the use of chemical weapons in Syria, Justin Trudeau said on Saturday. Of the European leaders, only Italian Premier Paolo Gentiloni warned that while this was a limited and targeted action, it cannot and should not be the start of an escalation. So, most every European nation has come out in support of these attacks, in support of these bombings, preventing further chemical attacks. However, the Italian premier said, though he believes it was a measured attack, though it was something potentially necessary, that it shouldn't be something that's used as provocation on either side to continue escalating the situation. That this has happened, they need to move on and go past it. And I kind of agree, and I think most countries, most people in most countries would agree with that. That whether no matter how you feel on either side of this, whether you feel like it was warranted by the United States and these Western allies or not, that it is something that doesn't need to be escalated further. Russia, China, and Bolivia all put in a motion with the UN Security Council to try to defend their side, and it didn't go through. So at this point, I don't think that escalation needs to be necessary, and I don't think it's something that should be looked for from either side. I think it should be something where Syria ultimately makes the decision that they cannot continue to do that, and that continuation will sort of be set as a precedent to be continually stopped and continually escalated so long as they continue to do that. I don't think, though, that this should be something that prompts larger powers like Russia and the United States to get into a Cold War situation where they're essentially trying to fight each other through other nations, as could be a potential case in Syria, though that has not happened yet. Although it has seemed to be a first move by Western powers, so we'll see how Russia responds now that their motion has been shut down. So, Russian President Vladimir Putin described the strikes as an act of aggression. So these are all things that we started to read yesterday. The U.S. ambassador to the UN said Washington was locked and loaded to strike again if Syrian President Bashar al-Assad again uses chemical weapons at a fiery UN Security Council meeting in which the Russian ambassador accused the U.S., UK, and France of diplomatic hooliganism. The US, British, and French strikes were aimed at damaging the Syrian regime's chemical weapons facilities in the wake of last weekend's gas attack on the Damascus suburb of Douma. So this is absolutely a terrible humanitarian crisis that is happening in Syria right now, and that has essentially brought this situation to a head where these countries have to make a decision. And I think the UN has sort of placed its stance on this, that Syria needs to be stopped from using these chemical weapons, and that these chemical weapons were a legitimate threat and danger to not only his own people, but also to world security. As well, going further than that, it shouldn't be something that either side tries to escalate and tries to push their own agenda through. So I think that ultimately, how this affects micronations and how this affects what we talk about on this channel is something pretty serious as well. I feel like as this goes forward and as we learn more and more about the situation and situations like it, as well, I'm sure we'll cover similar things on the channel in the future, though I hope nothing nearly as devastating, because this is just a very sad, sad time for nations all around the world. That something like this is happening, I think, really drives to a point all micronations to come together and to say what we're trying to do in creating these nations is defining a situation for ourselves and for our people, that we are striving to be better, that we are striving to bring people together and not to tear them apart. So in that, I think, and I hope other micronational leaders will stand by me in saying that this isn't okay. This isn't something that should be sought after in the future, and that as micronations, we need to step in as the example to our macronational brothers and sisters to say that this isn't okay, and that in order to move forward as a human race, we have to all come together in saying that people have fundamental human rights that need to be protected, and that in the case that our macronational allies and friends cannot come to an agreement on that, that we as micronations are going to come together on an agreement with that, and that we're going to seek the protection of human rights and to benefit people and to create a better standard of living for people in those awful situations and not a worse one, as it seems like is being created now. Because no matter what side you're on, both the Syrian gas attacks, which were terrible in crisis, and the bombings in Syria are just causing more and more devastation to a community that absolutely does not need it. So at this point, these people just need to be protected. No matter how you feel no matter how you feel about the politics of it, these people just need to be able to get their lives back and need to be able to feel that they can prosper in a place that truly benefits them. So with that, I think that sort of concludes our updates and our following of the Syria-Russia situation. If there is any more that comes out, we will definitely keep you abreast of the news, and we will definitely give you insight as well as we'd like yours. Other micronational leaders, please let me know what you think of this speech, this condemnation of the Syrian gas attacks, and I hope tomorrow's a better day. Thank you so much.